Welcome to the first in a series I am calling Awkward Video Lectures with Professor Reed. We are in my sewing room. I hope I can crop out most of the room from this shot because it's extremely messy. I don't usually film this room because it's a mess. So hopefully you don't have to see too much of that. I hope all of you are hanging in there and doing okay with all of this weirdness. I know it's a lot to take on. Just know that you're not alone and feeling like this is really strange and disorienting. So for this first video lecture, it's going to be more like a video message. This one is going to be fairly short, and I'm going to post a longer one next week because we've talked a little bit about revision in class already. I don't think I need to make a really long video lecture about this, but I just want to go over some basic things just to give you some more guidance if you need it while you work on revising. So remember, you'll only need to revise 2 paragraphs worth of your argument essay in order to reach the full requirements for revision for the assignment. So that doesn't mean that it needs to be 2 consecutive paragraphs. You can think of this as 10 sentences worth of revision if that is easier for you. So it could be 10 sentences spread out throughout your essay. That's totally fine. That works for me. Make sure that you take a look at the PDF guide on revision that I posted on Tuesday if you have not yet. I think it will be really helpful and can give you some ideas on things to change if you feel stuck about what you should change. But a couple of basic pointers. I know I've said this a lot, and I'm sure you're sick of me saying it, but now there's no one here to make a bored facial expression while I say it, so I'm free to say it as much as I want. That revision really is the most important part of the writing process, and it is the part of the writing process that professional writers take the most seriously. You know, when a professional writer sends out an article to a magazine, the editor doesn't just say, "This is great, I'm going to publish it right away." They send it back to that writer with a whole bunch of edits, and the writer then has to change it and revise it. It's a process that all of us are very familiar with. So I think it's strange that a lot of us seem to have the idea that people who are really good at writing just write something and are done with it. People who are really good at writing return to their writing again and again and work on changing it, and that's why I have this revision assignment. Something I super recommend to you, again, something I've said a lot, but I'll say it again, reading your paper out loud to yourself. This is the best way to find things that sound a little clunky. It's the best way to spot proofreading mistakes you might have made. You know, grammar things that you may have missed will show up to you when you're reading it out loud in a way that it just doesn't when you're reading it quietly. It's easier for our brains to miss this stuff when we're not doing it out loud. Another thing you can do, if you're willing to risk the embarrassment factor, is have someone else read it out loud to you. I think that this is actually better for proofreading and revising than reading it out loud yourself, because somebody else reading your work out loud is not going to correct things in their mind the way that you would, because you wrote it, right? I know that I do that when I'm reading my own work out loud. Sometimes I'll make it sound a little better than it actually is because I know how I wanted it to sound in my head. So it can be a good way to find spots that need some changes if you have someone else read it out loud to you. And I know a lot of us are in our homes now, maybe around other people that we weren't around during the rest of the school year, so it could be, you know, a good way to entertain like your little sister or something like that. Read it out loud to you. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here with ideas for you. Another thing I really recommend, and I think that this is especially useful with the argument essay, is reverse outlining. I've talked about this in class before. It's really useful for revision. Going through paragraph by paragraph, and in the margins, or, you know, digitally, however you prefer to take notes, next to each paragraph, writing a summary of what that paragraph is about, a summary of the main idea of that paragraph, right? So then you can go through and look at all of the sentences that you wrote summarizing your paragraphs, and then you can see if you're being consistent throughout your paper. Look at each summary and see if they line up, see if they flow well together, see if all of them reflect the argument in your thesis statement. You might find that you've gone a little bit off course sometimes, and you might be able to bring it back to the focus of your thesis statement by just adding 1 or 2 sentences at the end of each paragraph. So there are really easy little fixes for this. And remember that we did that in class once too, just simply tacked on a couple of sentences, bringing the argument back to the thesis statement. So if nothing else, the thing to focus on when revising is making sure that you're following your thesis statement. This might mean revising each paragraph just a little bit, or it might mean just changing your thesis statement just a little bit. That's a good fix too. And remember that revising doesn't have to be adding a whole bunch of new stuff. It can look like subtracting sentences too, especially if you know that you're someone who's very, very wordy. This is a good way to go about revision. So I want you to focus on thinking about what is best for the paper. I don't want it to be just proofreading. Remember that. It's not just changing grammatical things. Of course that's important, but I want you to think about what will make this writing better, easier to read, more interesting. We've talked a lot about conciseness, right? So if you find that you're somebody with really, really long, clunky sentences, a good way to go about revision could be splitting your sentences up, things like that. So if you feel really stuck in revising, please reach out to me, send me an email. I will happily give you some ideas about revision. I'm also going to be posting my feedback on your argument papers. I have learned in my years of teaching not to promise an exact date for when things will be posted because stuff happens, but I'm hoping to have it up by the end of this week. But know that you have until the end of the semester to turn in all of your assignments. I've thrown out my late policies because life is weird right now, y'all. So I'm really just trying to make as many accommodations for all of you as I can. So please, please, please reach out to me if you have questions or worries about anything. I am happy to help. And I'm being super lenient about just about everything right now because I know all of us are kind of going through it. So please hang in there. Let me know if you need anything. I don't really have any tips for you on how to make quarantine more bearable, except that I started playing Stardew Valley almost constantly on my phone, and it's a nice distraction, tending a little farm. So you could try that, but otherwise, just hang in there, and I will see you next week. Let me know if you have questions, and we can all revise together